Welcome to today's video. It's Tuesday, we're at Pancrack and we're heading out into the field. Today you'll see the smallest flips with big returns, buyer request and the request of viewers. So you can see that even with a small amount of capital, you can flip perfectly. So let's go. Hello? Everyone to today's video. We're in the village of Tušlovice, and here I'll show you one of the very successful flips where you'll see that even with a small amount of capital, you can make a nice flip. It's a plot of land measuring 2,200 square meters. I owned one half here, which I bought for 100,000 and sold a few months later for 400. Come take a look. Toklovice LV 1321. I received an offer here that there was an opportunity to buy arable land. One half of the plot, 2,200 square meters, give or take a few meters, and it was a strip of arable land on a slight slope just outside the village. What immediately caught my attention on the orthophoto was that I saw right across the dirt road or a light asphalt road, there was a pretty large solar park. In Toklovice, it's really, I think the company has actually bought several hectares here. And I saw the potential in the fact that if by chance the solar park were to be expanded and it went in this direction, they would pay me more for the arable land than I would get if I sold it as regular farmland to a farmer. I also looked at the zoning plan, which looked very good because it's just outside the village next to the built-up area. The only thing was, of course, there were power lines here. And another thing was that the land had a slight slope. There were several aspects here that weren't exactly ideal for construction or other purposes, but my intention was to hold on to it in case the solar park would be expanded. The purchase price was 100,000, the sale price was 400. An investor bought it to hold on to. I think that in a few years, they'll make a nice profit on it. All right, let's keep going. Today we're touring some real gems, little pearls, to show you that it's really possible to flip, even with smaller amounts of money. With 10,000, with thousands, with hundreds of thousands. But a lot of people have written to me saying, I have 200, 300,000, can I flip? Yes, you can. You can even do it with 100,000. The only problem is that if you buy something for 10,000 and sell it for $1 million, it can happen that the previous owner might sue you for what's called grossly unfair reduction. What is grossly unfair reduction? Grossly unfair reduction means that you buy something at a grossly disproportionate price. That means it can happen that you buy something for 100,000, sell it for $1 million, and within a year, the former owner can sue you for the difference between those prices, meaning 900,000, and you would be obliged to pay him up to the full $1 million. Of course, I explained it in a simplified way. It's not like someone can just catch you out like that and you'll immediately have to pay. No, the courts look into whether you misled the person, whether they knew about it, whether you didn't take advantage of some mental weakness or any other such factors. That means it's a bit of a slippery slope, but you can avoid it if you make sure to secure the purchase. So always check whether the person is legally competent, whether they're not in some difficult life situation, and whether no one is pressuring them. It's all about that initial purchase. Selling it for much more later on is a different matter. That could be down to your business skills or maybe some added value, negotiation, advertising, or even a court case, right? Don't be afraid of it, but be careful, okay? Excessive undercutting. Recently, it's also become common for companies involved in flipping to go after the people they have sold to, because law firms are reaching out to them and trying to encourage them to sue the next sellers. I'd like to say that, in my opinion, this is a criminal offense because they are actually inciting someone to commit a crime in order to gain some benefit, if things are really as I'm describing. And another thing is that a lawyer shouldn't be seeking out clients and trying to influence them in any way, you know, because in practice it works like this. A lawyer comes to the seller, finds out from the land registry that he sold something for 100,000. The next person sold it for $1 million and then says, come on, let's go after it. We'll sue for it. We'll get 900,000. It's about the fact that they just want to make money and are looking for work. So be careful about that. It's not always a lost cause, and it's about business acumen. Yeah, the fundamental parameter is that you must always be able to prove that you didn't mislead anyone, that they knew why they were selling it to you. And really, I've experienced very few such cases, because for someone to convince another person to sue over the fact that they sold something, and if you were fair to that person, it shouldn't happen that they would want to drag you down in court like that and demand those differences from you. Another thing that can actually help you with this is a clause where the person selling to you waives that right, You explain to him that he's really buying it for a much lower price, that it's because it's, for example, a co-ownership share, or there are some issues involved, or simply that he can't sell it. It's just that the times are tough. There were times when everyone was getting rid of forests. That was, for example, the time before COVID when nobody wanted those forests, and during COVID the value of forests shot up and there were huge returns. So definitely don't be afraid, but be careful about who you're dealing with and always have proof that you didn't mislead anyone. We are in the village of Zaleslice, land register 61, where I managed to flip an entire property. It was this ruin next to the road. It's about 288 square meters, and I bought the whole thing for 40,000 crowns. We then advertised it. There were ruins on the plot. We didn't do anything with it at all. No clearing out, mowing, removal, nothing at all. We left it exactly as it was. We advertised it, and a buyer contacted us who bought it from us for 530,000 crowns. Purchase for 40, sale for 530,000 crowns. What's interesting is that when buyers contacted us, they all had an issue with the fact that there were ruins on the plot, some debris, trash, and so on. That's why we had to decide who we would sell it to. For example, we had an interested buyer who said, yes, I'll buy it, but you have to clear it out first. However, in the meantime, one interested buyer showed up who didn't mind at all and said, I'll take it, I'll clear it out myself, I'll haul everything away myself. He was really just interested in the land itself. Of course, it's a building plot, it's 288 square meters. It's not really big enough for a large house with a garden. Not for that, but you could have a courtyard here. You could sell it to the neighbors, you could have some small parking spaces here or a small shop, anything really. So there's a lot of potential in this ruin. Nobody wants it, everyone is afraid of clearing it out. Everyone is afraid of demolition work, that it will cost money, but that's why you can really buy these ruins for next to nothing. 40,000 to buy, 530,000 to sell, and that's what flipping is about. Flipping small shares, so-called mini-flips, which we were looking at today, is actually a kind of chapter of its own, with its own advantages and disadvantages. Yeah, definitely a huge advantage of flipping those tiny plots or shares in houses is that you can buy them for just a few bucks. You see, here I bought for 40,000 and I sold for 530. Tomorrow we'll go to a location where I bought half a house for 5,000. I sold it for 500,000. A huge advantage is that you don't need a lot of capital for this. I get a lot of questions. People keep writing to me all the time. Can I flip with 100,000? Can I flip with 200,000? I answer all of you clearly, yes you can. You can flip with zero, you can flip by making an arrangement with someone to invest for you, and so on. However, if someone is really serious about flipping, then anyone can definitely come up with tens of thousands. Secondly, the costs are zero because you're buying parts of land, minority shares in houses, or perhaps some small units that are sold right away. This means that you have minimal costs while holding the property and minimal expenses for any management and related matters. Your only real expense is a 2,000 crown administrative fee for the transfer at the land registry. By buying small things for a small amount of capital, you can purchase more of them and spread out your risk. That's another huge advantage of these mini flips. Another truly huge advantage is that by having so many properties and buying them for less money, you also increase liquidity because there are far more people who can afford to buy something for 500,000 than there are people who can buy something from you for millions. So this is a huge advantage. What is the downside of these flips? And usually with these small flips, it's about buying for 10, 20, 100,000 and selling for hundreds of times more, sometimes even for 1,000 times more. I even have several properties that I sold for 10,000 times what I paid. But paradoxically, most of these mini flips happen in such a way that you buy for 100,000 and sell for 400, or you buy for 50 or 40 and sell for 530. And there's a huge appreciation. This brings with it a certain pitfall that has emerged recently, and that's what's called disproportionate reduction. Disproportionate reduction in legal terms is basically when you buy something, let me put it in layman's terms, when you buy something for a significantly lower price. It's not an absolute rule, but if you buy something for 100,000 and sell it for 500,000, within a year the former owner can come to you and say, look, you've committed disproportionate reduction. pay me the purchase price up to the market value, and if you sold it for 4 times as much for 500,000, you'll have to pay him another 400,000. I summarized it a bit. It's not always exactly like this because, of course, now the haters will jump up and say, well, I sold it there and they sold it for that much. No, that's not what this is about. In court, it's also examined subjectively. That means whether you misled the owner who was selling, whether it was under conspicuously disadvantageous conditions, whether they were legally competent. You have to have all of this covered when it comes to these mini flips. I recommend including a clause in the purchase contract stating that the person is aware they are selling to you for a much lower price. Secondly, include a clause stating that they waive the right to ever sue you for disproportionate reduction. Whenever there are these huge returns, everyone always asks what kind of scam or problem was involved that someone sold it to you for 40,000 and you sold it for 500,000. It's simple. You're buying something nobody wants and trying to find someone who desperately needs it. And in that search, you may or may not add value to the property, but in that search, you can be extremely successful. And here, specifically in this case, those people didn't want it. They really just wanted to get rid of it because it was nothing but trouble for them. The local authorities were constantly pressuring them to clean it up, to remove the rubble, to take care of the property. So they really just wanted to get rid of it right now, immediately. They didn't want to advertise it. They didn't want to deal with it in any way at all. So they sold it to me for 40,000 crowns. They were happy. They got the money. Personally, I had no idea that it was actually worth so much more. I knew it might be worth 50, 100, maybe 200,000, but I didn't know we would sell it for 500,000. We sat down and said to ourselves, let's try to shoot for a higher price on the real estate market. Maybe someone will come along who's interested, you never know. Maybe a neighbor or someone from the village will have some kind of plan for it. Maybe they'll want to store something there, maybe they'll want to build a house there, even though specifically 288 square meters is a house with a rather small garden. It could probably work, but it won't be anything spectacular. So always think about it, be creative, and remember that for some people something is completely worthless, while for someone else it's worth its weight in gold. For example, when I look specifically at this case, I think for the neighbor it's worth its weight in gold because he can buy a garage next to his house, a garden, or expand his house. And for him, it has much greater value than for some investor who buys properties for long-term holding and doesn't want to bother with it. Earlier, we were at the location in Clovis. There, for a farmer, it's worth 35 crowns per square meter, but for solar energy companies who would want to expand, it will be worth its weight in gold because they'll have everything in one place. Think about it creatively. In the end, we decided to turn these mini flips into a so-called series. That means today you've seen the first episode and tomorrow we'll head to other locations, which won't be any less interesting than today's. And we'll show you how to think even more creatively about these flips and that you really can flip anything, with anything, and for any price, sometimes even without money. So you have something to look forward to. And if you like this video, subscribe, give it a like, buy my books, my course, support me, and I'll keep making more and more videos with my team to teach you how to flip the right way. Take care, bye.